All right, great. Welcome back, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's a workshop meeting of the Planning Board of Village of Cold Spring. Really glad to see everyone back together after, I guess, it's almost been 2 months since we last.
January, right?
Yeah.
January.
So I don't have any substantial chairperson remarks today. I think, and unless folks have any agenda items they'd like to add or modify, I think we can move on to the minutes. All good? Okay. Why don't we take just 2 or 3 minutes just to do a quick review of the minutes, make sure that everyone feels good about them, and so we'll go ahead and approve them.
Hillary, you weren't here for that meeting, right? Okay. All right.
Yeah, we'll go later. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Good for me. Everyone good?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm good.
Does anyone have any amendments they'd like to make? Okay.
Yep.
I think we can
So we need a motion.
motion. We'll make a motion to adopt the minutes.
I'll second. You make a motion?
You
I'll make a
can.
motion.
Make a motion.
Yep.
You got a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
And one abstain. You're abstaining, right? You know what? I said, yes. Okay.
I think she's allowed to vote if she can attest that she watched
And I did.
the entirety of the.
No, I mean, so as far as voting, hi everybody, I'm John First. I'm one of the attorneys for the village. I know you met Jonathan last month or 2 months ago, but he had a conflict tonight, so I'm kind of pinch hitting for him tonight. So with respect to voting on the minutes, you have to be at that meeting to vote on it. However, if there's an application pending and let's say you miss a meeting and the application takes 3 meetings and you miss one of them, you can certainly still vote on the substance of that application. So you're free. And I mean, yeah, you should probably watch the recording of the meeting that you missed. But so you're free to vote on normal applications as long as you kind of, you're comfortable with it. And in my mind, that means, checking the video recording of the meeting you missed. But with respect to the minutes, you kind of need to be there to vote for them.
Thanks, John.
Mhm.
All right. Report of members. Does anyone have anything they'd like to bring up to the group?
I won't make the next meeting.
Okay.
In 2 weeks.
Okay. Correspondences. So we have one correspondence from the zoning board. We have a referral from Eric, head of the zoning board, for 2 applications that they are going to hearing with the one that we're currently addressing for the planning board, the 133 to 135 Main, as well as 5 Furnace Street. The nature of the referral is generally it's a procedural requirement. It's in the code. I think the intent of the referral, John, I don't know if you happen to know what the original intent was of requiring the referral as a matter of course. My interpretation is that that it is just to make sure that the planning board has an opportunity
Absolutely.
make note where they think that there may be planning related
Correct.
things that for things that maybe have only been referred to the zoning board.
Correct. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And every planning board treats it a little differently. Sometimes planning boards will say we have no comments. Sometimes they'll provide extensive comments. Kind of depends on the application as well. So
Yeah.
you have a lot of kind of discretion, but the focus is to make note of any potential planning issues.
Yep. I think given that 133, 135 is already in front of us, we'll have ample opportunity to comment both in workshop and eventually in hearing. 5 Furnace does involve a change of use. But if folks have anything that they would like to note, I can make sure to collect that and compose that in a response to the zoning board. But if you don't, I think we can just say no comment on both. So does anyone have any thoughts or anything they would like to raise with the zoning board with respect to those 2 applications?
John, do they, on the referral from the zoning board, does the planning board have to take a vote on whether or not they have any comments, or it's just a simple, we pass on any comment?
I mean, if you're passing on comments, I don't think you need to take a vote. If you want to put together comments, you should take a vote. And sometimes you have like a majority opinion. Sometimes you have people, it's really just a compiling various input from the various members. So, but we're not gonna take any, if you don't really want to comment on it, I don't think you need to vote on that, as long as everybody's okay with it. Just note it for the record in the minutes that, the planning board has decided not to take any, issue any comments on such and such application.
Thank you.
So, question, so we're gonna be talking about these this evening. Would we not want to, if comments came up for the zoning board, wouldn't we want to have run through those discussions first and then issued?
If you would like a moment to go, if you would like us to take time to go through 5 Furnace here in session,
Right.
to make sure there's no outstanding, I'm happy for us to do that. So if you want to take a few minutes to go through it.
I'd like to, well, I have no issues with it at all.
Yeah.
But I'd like to hear if anybody else has any issues, if
Okay.
anybody else has noticed things that I haven't or whatever, but I think it looks good.
No, I reviewed it today online.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any issues with it.
Okay.
So, I don't know if anyone else.
My only question is about the neighbor. It's it's a shared building, and this is pretty extensive, and I just want to know that either the neighbor doesn't get an opinion, or that the neighbor has been informed and whatever is supposed to happen.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that just from my experience on the zoning board. So that's a big part of how the zoning board does its work. It's gonna make sure that the neighbors are notified. It's gonna make sure they have the opportunity to speak at the hearing. They can submit written comment. They're very engaged, and it's a high priority for the zoning board to take into that consideration.
Okay.
So if that reassures you.
Yeah.
And then, issues like, I'm sure it's not under AIM, but
Yeah.
just respectable times of day to construction and so forth, that's just this is a very general question, that's the zoning board, right? Or that's part of code.
Code.
Code, okay.
So I don't know, John, do you want to have any?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear his question. What was?
So it was just, this, and it's just, this is a very, so we're, as you know, we're all new, so we're just really
Mhm.
trying to get our sea legs here. I'm very much trying to get my sea legs. So say with any, the issue of, this is just an example, the construction happening during, respectable sort of times of the day that are not going to interfere with the neighbors, life. That obviously construction has to move ahead and it's going to be noisy. That's what it is. But that's just life. Is that an issue for us or for the zoning board, or is that a part of code, or?
So that's by code. So if it was, there should be a noise ordinance. In fact, I know there's a noise ordinance that was modified and adopted back in June, and it addresses construction, when you can, the hours, what days. If you had an application before you, as the planning board, you could certainly talk about construction and the hours of construction, but for this 5 furnace, it's not before you guys, so it's really would be, it's really dictated by code in this case, because they're just going to the zoning board for certain variances.
Okay, cool. No, I think it's good. So, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. I think, so it sounds like we, as a board, for these two, we have no comment to the zoning board with respect to them, and we'll make the fullness of our comments for 133, 135 in session.
In session. Right,
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, I think that means we can move on to our existing business, which is 133, 135 Main.
Okay.
Yeah. So James, I know that you have updated a few things, so maybe we could do an intro where you just walk us through the changes and any new stuff that you've brought through, and then we can take a moment to kind of sit with them, and then we'll have questions for you.
Excellent, great. So, so just for everyone who wasn't here at the initial meeting, I'm James Hartford from River Architects. I also happen to live on 520 Street. So my firm is just up the street, and I was hired by Matthew Beachak to design the renovation and addition to 133, 135 Main Street. It's an interesting project in that it's about the same history as my own home. It's built just when Cold Spring was just beginning to expand, and it probably was part of the original foundry worker housing. So the structure is an older timber frame structure with some additions off the back. It currently has it's currently a mixed use building. So on the first floor, the eastern half of it, which was just formerly Wild, the plant shop, is commercial, and then the first floor to the west of that, so the 133 address, is the first floor kind of entrance to the entire residential unit, which extends over the top. So the entire, it's one single unit, first floor, and then the entire second floor above. So the intent is to convert that first floor space that's facing Main Street at 134 into a second commercial space, and then having to do basically to replace the rear addition and double that on the back of the to the rear of the property, and having a flight of stairs to access 2 apartments then from the rear. So, so in some ways, it's not really a change of use in that it's already mixed use with commercial and residential. It's to kind of extend that first floor commercial use there. The owner has requested, and the village is in the process of moving forward, with the front yard purchase, which is the area basically from the public sidewalk, where the current stoop, of both the residential, and that, right now it's the masonry stoop that's, currently there, goes right out to the edge. And so they're in the process of, doing a transfer between the village to the owner. So that space would be then part of this property. And the intent is to build to replace those two stoops with basically one single porch that's covered. Access is improved because of the sloping grade across Main Street, having stairs on either the east and on both the east and west edges of that porch, so that people accessing the commercial spaces are approaching directly and not on the slant, which has been actually quite a number of ambulance calls over the period of time. Yeah. I don't know about particularly for this property, but there have been quite a lot of pretty serious falls as people try to get into the buildings that are on. And so previously when I met with the board, there were several changes that were requested for part of our site plan, including the addition of a accessibility ramp, which we're showing on the west side, so between the former Hudson Hills and our structure, bringing wheelchair access to the rear of the commercial properties, so that lands on the rear deck and then allows entrance to both commercial spaces from there. Otherwise, the grade change really makes it impossible at the sidewalk level. And I think this is really where it falls into your purview, is the issue of the number of car spaces that are permitted. Previously, the code allowed for, basically as many as you could fit on the property. We have the code only allows for one in the driveway, so kind of a bit of a thing that the client is taking, but so be it. So,
Sorry, can you explain that to me one more time?
My previous set of drawings that I had submitted to
Right.
had shown 4 car spaces down the length of the driveway.
Right.
And the code change since the revised code has come out has not allowed cars to be kind of stacked one after each other.
Okay.
Because obviously management of that can be tricky.
Okay. So while we're on parking, I mean that's sort of the flag that I put up last time. And I'll just say that generally speaking, like I'm sure we all hear about the parking discussion in town generally, and it's becoming a real issue. Like I literally just had a way to complain about the lack of parking in Cold Spring. It's just going to become a more acute problem. So I'm not picking on this project necessarily, but I did actually walk the property, and I walked into the yard. I feel like there's plenty of space back there for multiple cars. Or probably not. My guess would be 3, but I think that's probably something we need to work on. But given that I think we do need to explore that this property is going to have 4 units. We should I just like to for the planning board to sort of really examine how many can we fit in and why that.
John, question for you. I know that part of the zoning application that's going to hearing includes a variance on the number of parking spaces. What is the right order of addressing that? If obviously if the variance is granted by the zoning board, it's no longer certainly not as acute of an issue for the planning board.
Correct.
So what is your advice there on sequencing of that's something that we will just note and then have to address when it comes time? Because we won't know what happens with the zoning board until they have their hearing and they make a decision about what they want to do with that. So do you have any advice there?
Yeah, because I guess depending on what the planning board decides, it could impact the site layout.
The zoning board, you mean?
I'm sorry, the zoning board, yes. So depending on what they decide, it could impact the the site layout that you ultimately review.
Yeah,
So generally, you kick it over to the zoning board and the zoning board will make a determination on the variances, and once you get that determination, whatever it is, whether the applicant has to amend the site plan to come in compliance or seek some, or go some other path.
right.
So you kind of have to wait to see what the zoning board does, before you really, finalize the site plan or finalize your review.
Okay,
Is this an instance though that, I mean, so we were talking 10 minutes ago about like, does the zoning board's asking us to make comment? Is this a good comment to give the zoning board? Well, we believe that
Yes.
the property should be required to provide X number of parking spaces.
Yeah, I mean, you can make the comment, based upon our review of the site plan, it looks like there might be some room for additional spots, just at the very least have the applicant explain why. Because as part of the zoning board's analysis, they're gonna look at alternatives, are there other alternatives besides granting the variance? So.
Right.
I think you would present it more of, zoning board, look at this issue.
okay, so it sounds like we can make that note. I can, probably what we'll need to do is I'll write that up and then our next meeting we'll approve that communication and we'll send it.
Well, do we know that it's feasible? I mean, I didn't walk the property as Ben says that he did, but I mean, I trust that, if you're gonna try to make someone squeeze in 4 spots here, it doesn't seem like it's, I don't know if we have the expertise to be able to.
Well, I
say
think
we
there's-
could fit 4 cars in there,
Sure.
and that would be the safest way to do it.
100%. Well,
I
and-
trust that the zoning board would take those things into account, but I mean, I.
Well,
I don't know.
Yeah, it's, it's tight.
Yeah.
For us to have the turning radii to do it,
Right, it just looks to me, again, I haven't seen the layout, but it seems to me it would be,
Right?
it might be
yeah.
more dangerous than adding spots to be able to have people maneuver back behind here is to get the cars out.
What it
Just
is
looking
very
at that.
deep, like it's a very wide property.
yeah.
So by the time you come around the corner, it's like, you keep looking and keep going, it could be a bowling alley.
But there's just the process of having, you basically need to have a T just to maneuver to turn around, and so, that there really, it kind of precludes any car, like you might be able to bring one out this way, but if you had another one here and were to, instead of just backing out, you'd have to nose in, back in, and then straight out again. So to do it, I mean, like, there would basically be no yard left, and I still don't think there's enough space to both maneuver and have parking for 3 more vehicles.
Okay, then I mean, so this is a part of the discussion, you're right,
Yeah.
we're not necessarily qualified, and I'm not, we need to figure out who is qualified, but I also because I'm just doing parking at my house myself, but but it's even if it's 2 spaces, like I think it's yeah, and I'm just, the reason why I'm like, I'm just in a steep learning curve here, but my understanding is that planning board really is very, very responsible for parking. In the town.
Among many other things.
Among many other
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
But that's like a big one for us. So it's something that I think we should take seriously, and we should explore. If it's 1 more parking space, that's very valuable in Cold Spring.
The challenge is, like, we had shown in our previous set of drawings, 4 cars comfortably stacked here. Now, it's, is it practical? Is it a hassle? Yeah, it is, sure. But, the previous owner always had 2 cars in their driveway. They had the tenant's car plus a dumpster when they're doing work upstairs. There's plenty of room to get the stuff in. The problem is that the zoning has changed to say, well, you can only have 1, and that's the problem.
I understand that, but it's in the backyard that I think we can fit.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't see how you can turn it. There's, I don't know, I mean, you would have to try it. What does the owner think about all the parking situation?
Well, he sees the upstairs units as, much as the wait staff that lived upstairs from Hudson Hills as being locally employed, so this is part of the walking community,
Right,
these are people that necessarily, could be, this could be where waiters work, live, and walk to work. So, the proximity to jobs is a good thing, walkable community is a good thing. And a lot of communities are moving away from strict parking requirements simply because of, recognition of higher density is better for
Moving away from what, sorry?
from higher parking requirements.
Okay, but the trustees passed parking permits 2 per unit, so there's actually, my understanding of what they passed is this building will now be eligible for 4 parking permits, no, 8 parking permits.
Mhm.
That's a burden we want to try and relieve as much as we can.
But yeah, I don't understand what the implications are.
Well,
I
it's
mean-
just, I mean, we don't know who's gonna be living there,
Yeah.
who's working there.
Right,
But let's assume that each unit.
Right.
And let's say you can take one car, so then basically you're burdening the village with 7 more cars
Mhm.
potentially.
Mhm.
Or more even, but and you're providing 1 parking space.
But I mean, it's a strange discrepancy that the village has, because in their parking calculations, we need 4 car spaces. And that's pretty logical.
Right.
2 small commercial spaces and 2 smaller residential, single bedrooms.
Right.
So it's, 4 spaces seems like a reasonable expectation.
Right.
We could fit 4 if we were able to just park them as we had first drawn them down the driveway like this, and it works. I mean, yeah, we could still have a turn spot here at the end to help with some of that maneuverability. That's a challenge. But if we were permitted to do this, then this is kind of a non-issue. But the problem is that the village code doesn't allow us to address it this way.
Okay, yeah.
One driveway is 1 car, I mean,
Yeah,
that's,
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, the driveway is always 1 car,
okay,
period.
Right,
So the way in which it was exist in the existing configuration supporting 4 cars was with 2 in the driveway, right? 2 plus
Mhm.
plus the additional 2 in the
Right.
back. So, but under the code, even with that configuration, it would only count as three parking spaces on an existing code.
Okay.
So that's basically the push, the ask would not be to maintain a status quo, but to add even an additional one to the rear yard than was currently being used. I think that's the
so you have 2 things that don't work. You have 2 commercial, 2 residential, therefore you're expected to have 4 space,
Right.
but the lot only, the code for the lot only says 1
Essentially, yeah. I mean,
because of the driveway.
yeah.
I can understand the owner wants to protect the backyard, I would if I were them,
Right.
but I cannot believe having seen it, that we can't fit in more cars in it.
Well, I mean, I could see if we can park one here and, I think it gets, it is tough in maneuverability. I think part of it is also the expectation of what would be permitted counted as a parking space if the driveway is only 1.
Yeah.
And then, but if the maneuverability issue only allows for maybe 1 other, we're still kind of very limited. I mean, I could see, here, but the issue is having the ability to get a full car length back, right?
Right.
Or
Mhm.
here, and then the turning, right? So, I could see if we counted this as 1 space and 2,
Mhm.
that
It would almost be one space and two, so that you'd have this, and then you wouldn't be blocking each other.
Well, yeah, but like for this car
Back
to
in.
be in here, you need to turn it. you
Okay,
know,
so
get
it
out.
can't even, see, that's what I was saying, I
Yeah.
don't know, it's so tight that it can't even just turn straight from there to go
Yeah.
down that way.
Well, it's one way or the other, you're gonna be backing, so,
Mhm.
you know, like, to back straight is one thing, but to have a turn is a whole different.
Right, yeah,
you know,
I got you.
complexity.
I mean, I think that right now we're in this kind of, we're having a weird conversation because we're, we're trying to imagine a scenario where we can fit four. The architect before us, the most qualified to make a determination, is saying that, he doesn't think that that's feasible. We don't have, between the group, the ability to assert that it is, but we have resources at our disposal. We have the village engineer that we could ask to evaluate, like, for a legal parking space. Is it possible to fit in, and what would be the mechanism?
Or the question, my question would be like, how many could we fit next to, like, maybe four, maybe three,
Sure.
but every additional parking space is just. That was relieving pressure on village parking, and that's really what I'm considering.
Yeah,
That's part of our end.
Sure. And I think the other tricky thing here is the timing thing that I was mentioning to John, which is like, if the zoning board provides the variance, we can't compel, a plan that goes beyond the requirement. And then if the zoning board does not grant the variance, there is still another avenue available to the applicant, which is to going to the village board to ask for a waiver of a parking waiver. So I think my main concern is like how to sequence this in a way that doesn't waste anyone's time and the village's resources on trying to do an engineering estimate, while also recognizing the very valid concern of we have space that potentially could be used for parking. The village is in a parking crunch. How do we navigate that effectively? So,
So weird question.
yeah.
Can there be a requirement for some of these units to not have a car?
No. They get two parking.
No, I mean, like you were saying, I know one of the people who used to work at Hudson Hills, and she doesn't have a car.
Right.
And the apartments be.
I mean, no one might use any of them. I mean, that's the
That's
nature of the parking spaces, is that there's for a site plan, what is required to be provided to be in compliance with the code.
Right.
That, like, knowing, like, and this is actually the big problem with the old code, which was it required so many parking spaces that you might see, a giant gravel lot sit empty most of the time because no one is using them.
The only thing that I could see from what your point is that if there was a way that the parking permits were restricted for the units, I don't think any other way that you could do it. That's the only way I think and that would be a different discussion. It would be to say, you can't tell anybody that, you can move in here, but you can't have a car in the village, but you might not be able to be granted a resident parking permit or something, but that's the only way you can really do it.
Right, yeah.
And that's a different discussion, which I think might be a good discussion for us if we want to limit the parking. The problem would be the residential parking that's happening for these variances that are given, that it's going to tie up a lot of the excess parking that the current residents, are even, scrambling now to be able to find spots if we can't park on Main Street. So yeah, it's a different discussion, but I agree with Ben that that's going to be a long-term thing we're going to have to deal with.
That's actually trustee issues, not.
Right, but I'm saying, but we as a planning board could say, listen, this is hampering us because we're trying to get more spots because we don't want to issue as many residential permits because that's going to tie up more things.
Right.
Maybe we could work with them to come up with a way, because it's going to be tough. This isn't going to be the only one that's going to come here, because I mean, I live on Main Street.
Yeah.
There's so many places that you just can't get the parking for the amount of
Sure.
village. So anyone that's gonna do any work is gonna be in the same boat that
Right.
that
Yeah.
James Klein's in, is that, they're running up against the zoning board, but then they're also running up against us that wants to keep it sort of limited, so.
Yeah,
That's, I think there's a big discussion that has to be had there, but it's kind of tough to tell a project manager to say, well, squeeze in as many as you can
Yeah.
here, when,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's feasible. But again, I mean, I'm with Ben. I think we should try to limit the units that are allowed to just have residential parking, because that's
Yeah.
gonna tax the whole village.
I find it surprising that the village is giving more parking permits than is permitted by the code, that seems to be.
Right.
Right, 8 is crazy for this, I agree,
like
so
to
maybe
do
there has to be some, if that's where it comes down to, that's our recommendation to them, to say, as the planning board members, we think there's too many parking spaces given per these units, especially ones that have variances, they can't park on the property.
Yeah, I agree, it's a tricky issue. I think it's also, it can be challenging to try to think about them at the same time. For me, I try to kind of separate them out in my head sometimes by trying to solve them separately, we make our lives a little bit easier, where we say, okay, we have zoning code that dictates a certain number of spaces based on the form of the lot, the use of the lot. We separately have said, okay, for residents of the village, for business of the village, we're trying to protect their ability to park on the street when necessary. So we have this resident parking permit program. I think that trying to I find it very hard to try to reason about the effective implementation of or constraining of the zoning code, also in the context of saying, well, this is what's also allowed, and there's a lot of different hops you can do mentally.
Right,
and
you're saying we just have to focus at this particular spot, but yeah, I'm saying.
that would be my
Yeah,
recommendation.
absolutely, I agree, but I'm saying
Yeah.
with this, the way the discussion went, I agree.
Yeah.
100%, but I do think that there's a long-term thing as the planning
Yeah,
board.
if I can interject, I agree with the chair. I mean, your job is to look through the zoning code and the criteria for site plan review and apply that to this application. There might be overarching policy or, the whole residential parking permit. I mean, that's like comparing apples and oranges, I think. So I think you guys just need to kind of focus on the zoning code and how that's applied. I guess, the applicant, it sounds like you want the applicant to at least maybe explore the possibility of adding a space or two. It sounds like it's pretty tight. It looks like it's tight based upon my review, but, I think it's a valid question, because the ZBA should theoretically be asking the same question, because the ZBA needs to minimize, the ZBA's got to look at, well, can you only seek a variance for 2 of the spaces or 1 of the spaces? So I think it's a valid question to at least explore it.
And John, in terms of, I know on the zoning board, entertaining alternatives and approving, doing conditional approvals or approving certain versions of an alternative is within the zoning board's purview, and within the planning board, do we have similar flexibility of approving an alternative plan? So if we had an option, a scoped option for a plan that involved three parking spaces, as an example, that we could consider both of them in the hearing, and then choose to approve one or the other, or does it need to be like a single proposal that is either approved or denied?
So, there is a little overlap, because if the zoning board grants the variance to allow only 1 off-street parking space, then you as a planning board don't really have jurisdiction to
Exactly.
change it.
Well, that was, yeah, that's the sequencing problem that I was noting earlier.
Right.
This is more, let's say the zoning board does not approve the variance for parking, and instead it goes before us, and we are deciding to approve or not a site plan.
Oh, okay, and they're.
In that
the
instance,
waivers.
we could have a site plan that has one parking space, or we could have a site plan that has three. Is that something that we can decide in the hearing to approve one versus the other, or do we need a single proposal that's before the hearing that is either approved or denied?
I mean, you can have one proposal, but you're free to adjust that. So if the proposal at the hearing shows 3 spaces, and as a board, you say, you know what, we're fine with 2 spaces, and, you can go try to seek the waiver from the village board. So you have flexibility to look at different scenarios, whatever you guys feel is best based upon how the site's laid out.
Okay. So it sounds like a thing that might be useful for the zoning board, and if, depending on what happens with the zoning board hearing, may be useful for us, is a alternative plan that attempts to say, like, what is the maximum number of parking spaces that you feel that could actually be squeezed into the plan, with a nod toward just what can we do to address parking. That probably suggests that the sequencing is a really important factor for the timing of our hearing.
Yeah.
So I think it's April 9th, is that right? For the zoning board hearing? Okay. So that probably suggests that we'll wait to set the date of our hearing until we know what's what from that. Yes.
You're on that by a long time, so,
So the zoning board hearing is on April 9th.
okay,
We won't know what they decide and what the kind of the lay of the land is for the kind of final plan that is before the planning board, the site plan is before the planning board until that hearing concludes.
Okay.
So I'm suggesting that we don't schedule our hearing for this, the planning board's hearing for this property, until after we find out what the zoning board has determined in their hearing.
okay,
Because that materially impacts the parking issue.
okay, but are we gonna recommend to the zoning board that we explore more parking spaces?
That's fine, that's fine, that's a
That's the.
separate issue, but yes, 100%, so, from my perspective, I'll try to write up your concerns as best as I can.
Okay.
I'll bring it to the next meeting, we'll vote, and we'll send it on immediately afterwards.
Sure.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Anything else on the parking before we?
No,
Okay,
Just,
yeah,
I've zoned out
Yeah.
on Main Street parking because it's not my problem and therefore it doesn't exist. So is there no parking for residents on Main Street? Is that
no, there's a residential parking program which has been partially rolled out and I think is going to be enforced starting April 1st. Allows residents of certain streets to have up to two residential parking permits per dwelling.
yeah, depending on, if they've got a driveway for one, then they get one. If they've got no driveway, they get 2.
right? Yeah, because I've seen the signs on
Yeah.
Furnace.
And then, but that also means that, say, and I think, look, please don't quote me on this, but I think it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not operated during the week, but on
Yeah.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, during basically business hours, a resident can't park on Main Street.
Okay.
I mean, even if they have a parking permit, it's meter parking, they have to find parking on side streets.
Okay.
So then there's gonna be a lot of rush for side streets. It then also means that visitors can't park in residential.
Right. Yeah, they're gonna be.
You've got to have a permit for that. But it also means that, say, I live on the other side of 9D, just literally on 9D. But I can't park, I can't go visit my friends down, which is fine. It's not a complaint. It's just, it is what it is.
We don't
I
want you,
got-
we don't want you down here.
I got, obviously not, I get that. But it's, you can just imagine,
Yeah.
like, people are really fired up about this.
Right.
And the reason why, again, this is not about this property, I'm just trying to learn,
Right.
this solar system. But also to take the job seriously and we need to try and squeeze every single parking spot in Cold Spring.
Well, and like where I live, 2 houses down from you.
Oh, okay.
I'm at 17 Wall, the house set down.
Okay, yeah, great.
So they have, on the other side of Wall, it's Marion is the name of the street. And they put up, they eliminated parking on one side of the street there.
Yeah.
That used to be packed
Mhm.
on the west side.
Yeah, we have less
And-
parking to deal with.
Yeah. So it will be interesting.
One more thing just to add, I think like part of our job is to take the things that are priorities for the village and make sure that they're expressed in evaluating and nudging site plan
Sure.
in various directions. And but I also want to make sure we don't like the issue of the day is one of many priorities the village has for itself, and just make sure everyone keeps in mind what are the other things that the board is trying to represent on behalf of the village to these site plan evaluations and approvals. So just something to keep in mind as we kind of move forward with this.
James, I have a quick question. What's the existing use? So it's already has a residential use, correct?
Yes, yep.
And it has one, so it's how many bedrooms? It's just one residential unit right now?
Well, it's the entire, 2 addresses actually, so it's the entire property upstairs as well as the first floor. So, I would say it's probably, I'd say it's a 3-bedroom house.
So it's one unit, 3 bedrooms, and then it has, the other quarter is commercial.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So I mean, that's the other thing is, what's required under the current situation with respect to the parking? You have one residential, so what, would that be 2 spaces?
Yes. Mhm.
So like you gotta think of the delta. The delta is really just adding 2 spaces to what's currently required and currently used.
Correct,
And that's just something to think about. You're really only adding 2 spaces, the proposal.
Cool. Thanks.
Great.
So I think the other things are dumpster location and some of the screening. Do you want to talk us through that?
Yeah, so, I can't see it on my drawing room, what to scribble all over it. I was shown. Yeah, so, and it came out, the print is pretty light here, but everything's spot marked there, 'cause it looks junky. I'm showing a 3 by 8 foot enclosure for chickens there,
Yeah.
which I would relocate if that's the case, I'd probably like move it here perhaps or something like that. Because that still can get down the hall, that pathway. So, and then we're showing, lawn and then evergreens, so we've got basically two residential properties adjacent to it. So putting evergreens kind of where, kind of strategically to soften the view and edges, and lawn for absorption, and just recreational space for the tenants. We're also, showing a 6-foot privacy fence, which I believe is the height that's required actually between commercial and residential. And so that would basically, just kind of,
The solid wood.
yeah,
Okay.
the picket type fence. I think in addressing, like hopefully adding another 1 or 2 more spaces, relocating that dumpster enclosure, can enclosure would be, an easy. So,
Love the addition of the ADA ramp. I think, do you imagine that being usable by, I guess it's because there's no additional ramp up to, there's no additional way to get up to the residential units, that basically it's primarily for the commercial access.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, that would provide access to both, through the year, so, rear, they
Yeah.
both have decks that
Yep.
are contiguous.
Yep. Okay. Any other changes you want to call out to us?
Those are the only changes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, does anyone have any other comments or questions? Okay, so I think it's something we kind of decided on our course of action from here, which is we're going to, I'm gonna compose, a draft, response, about, 133, 135 Main to the zoning board about parking. We'll review it and try to approve it, vote on it next time.
Okay.
We'll hold off on scheduling a hearing until, after April 9th.
Yeah. I think if you can word it, and John, please help if it's, if this is legit, but to word the request, as kind of a, not a relief from parking, but a relief in how it's applied,
Sure.
that single space for a driveway is really onerous because,
Yep.
just kind of blows every opportunity there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's big, I mean,
A lot of space.
it's a lot of space,
Yeah.
and you can't use it for anything else, really.
Right.
So,
Actually, Ben, since you, brought up the issue, do you want to take a stab at the draft?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Are we, John, are we allowed to circulate drafts, between meetings?
You can circulate it, but don't discuss. So if you have a draft that you've prepared, I would definitely circulate it before the next meeting. And if somebody can't make the next meeting and would like to submit comments, they can do it. But I would just read those into the record at the next meeting if that person is absent.
So for example, I know you just answered that, but I'm just trying to understand it. So let's say, for example, I write a draft, Jesse makes edits, he sends it back to me, I make some edits, I send it to Kevin makes some edits, he sends it back. Is that okay or not okay?
Not really, no. Like you could certainly make a draft. Maybe if you want to run it by the chair first before you circulate, that's fine.
Okay.
But you really shouldn't kind of piecemeal it like that. It should just be sent to everyone when it's ready. And, like I said, people can comment via email, but there really should be discussed at the meeting, people's comments and the back and forth should happen.
Well, I think the nature of the correspondence is also like, I think you could put forth an opinion,
Right.
and others can join that or not.
Right.
And we'll try to represent it as faithfully as possible back to when we meet back, it'll be to agree that the form of the response or the comment
Right.
is acceptable to the group. So
Okay.
I don't think we're not necessarily creating a synthesized communal response to the referral.
Right.
It can be just like, here is majority opinion or minority opinion, or here is an opinion that's joined by these members. And so we don't, I guess my point is, I don't think we necessarily have to do a lot of wordsmithing as a group.
Right.
It's probably okay for you to take a best first pass
Sure.
at a stab and then circulate it before next meeting, that way people can come to the meeting with any suggestions on edits, and then coming out of the meeting, we will have a draft that we can adopt and basically send as an official thing. So, yeah.
That
Just-
sounds good.
Yeah.
Just a question. Your best case scenario for your client, that would be your plan A. So if it gets poo-pooed, technical term, do you also have like a plan B in the briefcase and a plan C, just in case, so that you're not automatically said, no, go back to the drawing board, but at least be prepared for something that your client could live with?
Well, I mean, it's coming down to parking and, like the reducing the amount of building area would be a very undesirable
Mhm.
thing, a pretty major impact on the viability of the project. When it comes down, like if we can have, like backup plans where parking may not be perfect and, but we're given more flexibility in what is required by code. You
Mhm.
know, again, a driveway can be for more than one vehicle, for example.
Of course.
You know, that sort of thing would be very helpful, and, you know, and I can have, you know, alternative, you know, kind of approaches to the parking. But redesigning the building as designed would really, that's something I really would have to speak to the client about, because that's, you know, gets into.
Of course.
fees.
Of course, but as is, as it's, as the plan is laid out, but yes, how, what variance or variances you would be looking for if need be.
Mhm.
Those, is to, you know, be prepared, that's all.
You know, I don't know if John, if you're prepared to answer this, but if, you know, can it be a variance that the driveway is allowed to permit to have more than one vehicle? Is that
I guess you could seek a variance from that specific provision that only allows one spot for a long driveway, yes. Or you could seek a variance from the table where they calculate the parking. You know, so yeah, that's up to you how you want to approach it.
Yeah, well, that seems like the most logical way to satisfy your concerns, and
I just think there's a whole lot of backyard there that's not being used, and you can tell I feel pretty strongly about
Yeah.
it. So, yeah, I mean, I could take you through the jigsaw puzzle and show you how I think that it could work, but that's not my job, so.
John, I have a question.
Yep.
Since the zoning board has already set their hearing, on the basis of them finding the application ready for that, if there's an additional request for a variance to accommodate this issue of the parking, does there have to be, a separate application for that to get before them?
Well, that parking was part of that zoning board request, is it not?
I thought so.
Okay. All right,
Yeah,
so that,
I didn't see the notice, so I don't know which provisions were called out. Or did it just say a parking variance?
um,
I mean, that's really a question for the zoning board.
now, the variance was pursuant to 134.7 for lot coverage, side yard setbacks. And then with the percentages, does that include the parking, or is that gonna be an issue?
If the parking wasn't in the notice, then yeah, that's an issue. Do you have a copy of the notice?
Yeah, the notice hasn't been generated.
That's the referral. Do you have a copy of that or not?
Oh,
May not have it.
the building inspector's referral?
Yeah,
Well, the the building inspector's referral.
Well, so then if you use a parking table by planning board is required for a village code.
Right, you'll see under the first
Right.
bullet point, it says parking table. Right.
For planning board then?
Oh, yeah,
Planning board.
here.
Yeah,
You want
it's
to see that
required
first
for
one? It
village code.
says,
Yeah, I mean, the referral doesn't indicate the parking, but as long as the notice for the ZBA public hearing indicates the parking,
Yeah, because
that's fine.
this referral came well before the zoning board decided on, went through its discovery process with you and
Right.
and so,
this is 2023.
yeah, I think without the zoning board posting for the hearing, I'm not sure what we can say.
Yeah, we just met, what?
Yeah, 2 days ago, right? Tuesday, right?
night, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, their letter hasn't been generated yet.
yeah. They haven't done the notice of hearing yet, but should I refer Eric to you just to discuss that, to make sure that,
If he needs help, yes, but the parking variance request definitely has to be in the notice.
okay.
All right, so something to follow up there outside of this board's
Yeah.
work, but,
And the issue really is that their notice, the zoning board's notice needs to include that specific variance. It's not that, I mean, the 9th isn't an up and down vote. It's, that's the opening of the public hearing and that can continue so that, they can choose to close it or leave it open.
that's true. I feel like that the issues of variant, the things that are being requested have to be established initially. Yeah, so that's the important part.
Yeah, no, I got
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Great. Cool. I'm glad we.
Yeah.
Got to that. Very good. Cool.
Okay, I think that concludes our discussion of 133, 135. So James, if you would like to reclaim the rest of your evening, you're welcome to.
Yeah, and thanks for putting up with my learning curve.
No, that's
Yeah.
great.
I really appreciate it. I'm really trying to fill the space out. So
Yeah, no,
hopefully in about 5 years, I'll be a little better. So.
yeah. I want to thank you all for stepping up and filling an important role. So, good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sure, this won't be the last project.
Yeah.
So you want us to get our feet underneath us?
Exactly, yeah.
Thanks, Shane.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right, I have, oh wait, we don't have any new business right now. Right. Do we have any members of the public? None here, okay. Board business, I had one item, just occurred to me, since we last met, that I think I've been thinking a lot about is both the accessibility of the board's work to the public, but also the accessibility of the board's work to itself and to future members. So I would like to put together a draft onboarding document for new members, for the group to review and hopefully approve as like a useful document. Just to help with onboarding and help getting people oriented well. So I wanted to solicit from the group any resources that folks found especially valuable in their own onboarding and getting up to speed.
Well, I went through the old website and
Yeah.
some of the old meeting minutes
Yeah.
and things like that. I think that if we had something, I had to search through and get through
Yeah.
this, but I do think you're right. If we had sort of like a packet that included some of the minutes from a typical meeting or something that was prior that would be easily accessible.
Yeah.
And then the review of what is expected, like the workshop that we had
Yeah.
in the beginning of February about what we went over, just some things like that, so you could go in with a little bit of an understanding of
Yeah.
what you're gonna be getting into. That
Yeah.
would definitely be helpful.
Okay.
Like, it would have helped me
Yeah.
before I go in. I mean, I did the research myself, but it would be nice to just have like a little
Yeah.
concise place that I could pull
Yeah.
up and be up to speed.
John, is the presentation Jonathan put together for us, is that something we could reference and distribute to new members as they come on board?
The day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great. Okay, we'll make sure that's included.
That was great, by the way, John.
It was
That was really good.
Good,
very helpful.
good.
Okay, so we've got you found the videos.
Well, I didn't watch the videos. I saw
Oh.
that there was minutes and there was.
the minutes,
Yeah, the minutes
okay.
from prior meetings and
Okay.
they were all posted. So
Okay.
like you go through and some of them were nothing, but some of them were like this meeting where they were kind of in depth and they went through. And so there was some good information. So you got a little bit of an understanding. So I think it's like a sample minutes of something. Maybe it doesn't have to be a particular meeting. It could be like in general of what you
Yeah.
could expect for a meeting, like a sample.
Okay.
What you would go through during a planning board session.
There's also NICOM training, which is available to us. We have a little bit of budget for board members to take. It's basically, it's NICOM, I don't remember what NICOM, New York,
New York Conference of Mayors.
Conference of Mayors, yeah. But there's some material that they provide, it's like coursework for planning boards and stuff like that. And there's also some stuff that I found from the state that is very general planning board stuff, but I also want to include in this. So I'll try to put together that for next time.
That'd be great.
Well, it's
And-
something that we should do, right? That you think, like, I mean, yeah, for us to go through it, you want.
Yeah, 100%.
You wanted a special, just like we had the
Yeah.
special session in early February, to have another special session, something along.
No,
those
well, I
lines.
think these are things that, that everyone can do on their own time.
Okay.
So,
all right,
it's all available online. So, in putting this
Right.
together, if there's anything on there that folks will find useful, feel free to take advantage
yeah,
of.
Perfect.
We don't, and we have budget for it every year, so,
Yeah, I found videos. Really helpful.
Okay. Great.
Just to add to that, the New York State Planning Federation also offers classes, seminars that you could probably do online.
Okay.
And Dutchess County Planning also has a bunch of classes and seminars.
Dutchess County has their own planning.
Yep, their own planning department. They'll do a lot of classes for board members.
What was, and what was the other one you mentioned besides, it was,
The New York State Planning Federation, which is kind of like a private association, a collection of planners.
okay,
They offer a lot of training too.
I'll make sure those are both included as well.
But Dutchess County, we're Putnam County, but it's open to everybody to use? Is that-
Yeah, anyone can attend it.
Okay.
Great.
You might have to pay, you know, I think it's pretty nominal, $10, $15, if that.
Okay. That's all I have on that. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second it.
All
All right.
right.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, John.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, John.
Is the V, is this